Today, there are more African Americans under correctional control in prison or jail on probation or parole than were enslaved in 1850, a decade before the Civil War began. This was said by Michelle Alexander, a graduate of Stanford Law School and Vanderbilt University. She's a law clerk for Justice Harry Blackmun and is now an associate professor of law at Ohio State University. Discrimination is happening each and every day. It is happening to refugees and immigrants, but it also happens to minority groups and is unfairly affecting our prison and crime statistics. Today, I'm going to tell you about minorities in prisons and arrests, and finally, I'll tell you about why this is happening. Blacks, Latinos, and other minorities are more heavily policed. Because they live in heavily dense urban areas, police can monitor more people more often. Black and white people smoke marijuana at similar rates, but blacks are 3.7 times more likely to be arrested for marijuana possession. Some of this discrepancy is driven by racism, more illegal searches of black people, and an increased willingness to let non-blacks off with a warning. Minorities are also more likely to be arrested and convicted more often. An arrest doesn't always lead to a conviction, and a conviction is a state of being found or proven guilty. 35% of blacks are arrested for drug possession, and 46% of those are convicted. Minorities are also more likely to be sentenced to prison. One study found in a particular region, blacks were convicted to felony offenses 51% of the time, while whites were only 38% of the time. Race was and is a key determinant in a judge's decision to incarcerate. Minorities are more likely to rely on court-appointed public defenses. In Delaware, 75% in its Court of Common Pleas never speak to a lawyer. 13 states have no structure at all to make sure people have access to public defenders. And finally, minorities are more likely to be pulled over, ticketed, and searched than whites. Once pulled over, blacks are searched by police 3 times more than whites, and Latinos 2 times more than whites. 28% of the black male population under 25 years of age were stopped in a year, while only 12% of white males and 7% of white women were stopped. The main cause of this discrimination we see in our prisons and in our world is racism, especially with judges, jurors, and police. As Michelle Alexander said, the problem isn't mass incarceration, but mass criminalization. Our criminal justice system now functions more like a system of racial and social control than a system of crime prevention or control. Reddit Hudson is a former cop, and he now works for the NAACP, National Association for the Advancement of Colored People, and the Board of the Ethics Project. He stopped being cop after 5 years because he said he could no longer participate in a system that was so intentionally unfair and racist. As a kid, he hated cops and he hated the way they treated him. But one of his father's close friends and mentors was a cop, so he became a cop to use the police's power and resources to help his community in St. Louis. But he said that cops routinely called anyone of color a thug, whether they were a victim or just a bystander. Too many times, officers saw young black and brown men as targets. They would respond with force to even minor offenses, and because cops are rarely held accountable for their actions, they didn't think too hard about the consequences. Bayard Rustin, an American leader in the social rights movement of civil rights, said, "If we desire a society of peace, then we cannot achieve such a society through violence. If we desire a society without discrimination, then we must not discriminate against anyone in the process of building a society."